So Ben Shapiro wrote a really shitty short piece on Bernie Sanders. All of his pieces, of course, are hot garbage, but especially anytime he touches on political theory, political ideologies, he doesn't seem to get them right pretty much ever. Okay, this article is titled "Why the Democrats Won't Stop Bernie," and this was posted just today. And what's funny about this piece, he's basically trying to make the argument that like no Democrats are trying to stop Bernie Sanders when the Democratic Party was literally having, the DNC was literally having secret meetings where they were trying to recruit people to beat Bernie Sanders. So obviously that whole thing, just throw that garbage out. But there's one thing specifically that I wanted to look at here because it's really hilarious to me. So he says, but no Democrat was willing to stand up to the Sanders base. They were too greedy for its energy and too optimistic that the energy was transferable. It wasn't, and so the Democratic Party has been captured by an ideology foreign to it. The ideology of Noam Chomsky infused directly into the bloodstream of a party that once touted former President John F. Kennedy. Partisanship is a hell of a drug. So there's some problems I have here with this, okay? Now, if you don't know about Noam Chomsky, he's like really far left, all right? Like, I don't know if you can get further left than Noam Chomsky, maybe. I don't know if the crazy far lefties or whatever random flavor of far left you are is going to rage at me. He's pretty much as far left as you can get. I mean, he's like, you know, he's got the utopia vision of like a moneyless society and all that stuff. He says all that stuff is possible, and I think that's his like ideal utopia and all that. I believe he's an anarcho-syndicalist, and you know, he's a big fan of anarchism and all that stuff. So he's pretty far left. All right, Bernie Sanders is not a Noam Chomsky even close. All right, not even close. Even if he was a democratic socialist, he still really wouldn't be that close to Noam Chomsky. Although he kind of would be, but he's not even a dem soc though, because he's not a socialist. He's a social democrat. So ironically, you know, he says that the Democratic Party has been captured by an ideology foreign to it. Maybe in recent history that may be the case, but when FDR was president, man, he was, you know, obviously the president from the Democratic Party side. You know, that's the ideology that Bernie has. As Noam Chomsky himself says, he calls him a New Deal Democrat, because that's really what he is. He wants to implement social democratic policies that exist in Scandinavian countries, but not just Scandinavian countries. Literally take your pick of any single modern developed nation. Doesn't matter. Take your pick. Canada, Germany, UK, France, whatever. Doesn't matter. They all have universal health care. They all have better educational systems than we do. They all have better social safety nets. And everything ends up being better in those countries. And so we're trying to catch up to those other countries. We're trying to get a universal healthcare system. So it's hilarious. Now, the other piece that I wanted to talk about is John F. Kennedy. Now, I actually think I underscored JFK because I had actually thought that JFK was not all that progressive of a guy, because some of his comments, like, you know, he said that whole thing about like a rising tides lifts all boats, which is that's the bogus, you know, trickle down economics bullshit argument. And then that quote that he has about what does he say? He says, "Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country." That sounded very odd, but I've actually gone back and seen a bunch of his speaking, and there's literally a clip of him arguing for Medicare for all. And he's arguing for raising the minimum wage. He's arguing for expanding and protecting Social Security. He's making arguments about back then about how, you know, we need this universal healthcare system. He's saying, you know, the same argument they made about Social Security and raising the minimum wage, they're making about this system, you know, of Medicare for all, universal healthcare system. So, and especially when it came to racial issues, he was like, at the time, I mean, I was watching his debate with, I think it was Nixon. And he was talking about like the disparity that exists between, you know, black babies' future and white babies, and you know, it just came off to me as he's somebody who's like really progressive on that issue, and then he was also progressive on economic issues. So JFK was not some sort of liberal, you know, who's, you know, Nancy Pelosi or someone like that, but he's called Barack Obama a Marxist. So I don't know what he's under the presumption that John F. Kennedy is. Is he, because if Obama's a Marxist in your mind, oof, you have no idea what you're talking about. What, you know nothing about politics, you know nothing about political theory, nothing about political ideologies, and that's it, you know? So this is come from the guy who said that Obama was a Marxist, but JFK is literally actually in line with Bernie Sanders. Virtually all the policies that he was proposing, Bernie Sanders supports today. Medicare for all, raising the minimum wage, protecting and expanding Social Security, and forward and forward. It's probably even more policies that he would support of his. And so his idea of like somebody who was an old guard of the Democratic Party but so changed is hilarious. And then comparing Bernie Sanders to Noam Chomsky, ugh, laughable.